Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
What's good, party people? Good morning and gefilte fish wherever you are. This is According to Woods, and we're doing something a little bit different. We have essentially assembled a super team to basically chronicle and celebrate the life and works of Don Henley of the Eagles, as well as Phil Collins of Genesis. I have joined with me is none other than James Law Jr., Flobo Boyce, and the real Jack Farmer. And we're going to basically talk about two people who most people call them dad rock. And I go, no, these are two of the greatest of all time in what they do. So, gentlemen, thank you guys for joining me here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
It threw me off, though. I thought Daddy Limelight was going to be in the show, too. I was like, oh, wow, Daddy Limelight loves Genesis? I had no idea.
That would be awesome, but now I actually have to go through AEW standards and practice to get Danny Limelight. So I got him right before.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to hear Danny Limelight talk about Genesis and the Eagles now. I have a feeling.
Yeah, mi gente, Hotel California is the best song of all time.
He's like, of course, A New York Minute is my favorite Don Henley song. That's it. So, I mean, do you guys have... Okay, so here's the nuts and bolts of it. Obviously, the Eagles were probably one of the greatest bands of a generation. Hotel California outsold Thriller in terms of all-time sales, in terms of the biggest album of all time, right? And obviously, Don Henley has a large part of it. He is the drummer, but he's also a lead singer of a lot of their songs during their heyday. But so to it, Phil Collins of Genesis, right, was the first, actually, he was the last person in all of Genesis to release a solo record. And he was the one who was getting a solo album out of Phil Collins in the heyday was almost like pulling teeth. But he ended up doing it, and he probably was the most, without a doubt, the most commercially successful member of Genesis in terms of his solo career. So do you guys individually have, one better than the other? Did you like the Eagles better than Genesis? Phil maybe better than Don? Sound off.
I was more a Phil guy, I guess, if I'm comparing the two. But I feel like it's a little unfair because Phil had a resurgence with the Tarzan movie that sort of brought him back to the back into the fray. It's almost like Queen
Oscar winner
big and disappeared, and then Wayne's World showed up, and everyone became Queen fans again. So he got a little bit of a bump later on down the line. But I like the one that got me into all of these songs and these artists was I Can't Dance back in the day. That was my jam. So I go Phil Collins.
Phil Collins. What say you, Flobo?
I'm in the same boat. A little bit different. The Eagles, and I'm pretty sure you're going to talk about this. They kind of like drifted into the country. And in my youth, I totally did I abhorred that genre completely. I mean, it's the most opposite of Brooklyn that you can get. And when it came to commercially successful, I mean, you're talking about Miami Vice, right? In the Air Tonight was heavily featured. And the first Phil Collins video I saw, Studio, put it on the map for me. And I'll say this too off the top. These two bands or these two men or these two groups occupied very similar timelines. We're talking late 70s, early 80s, but it feels like alternate universes. Like their approach to the progression of music were such different ways. I wouldn't be surprised if most of your fans now can appreciate both, but kind of lean to one over the other.
No, 1,000%. That's a great analysis. Now, James Law Jr., somebody that had, experienced it in its heyday, both people, right? What say you?
Yes, Flobo. What he's saying is, I'm the oldest person in the group, so I was there, which I take it. No, I totally take it. I take it. I'm looking at all of you. No matter. I'm saying it. Okay, so in all seriousness, so yeah, I was there from the birth of both of their careers. I mean, I was there. The Eagles were played in my house all the time, and they were the backing band for Linda Ronstadt, which was played in my house all the time. Huge Linda Ronstadt fan. I remember when Peter Gabriel was the lead singer of Genesis.
Yeah.
And I remember when Peter Gabriel first came out with "Shock the Monkey," and he came out first, and then Phil "In the Air Tonight," and all that kind of stuff. So I remember all of them as they progressed. I feel like it's not a fair comparison in some ways because it reminds me of Michael Jackson and Prince. To me, they're both black guys from the Midwest. They're the same age. Other than that, very different kind of careers.
Done and done.
The Eagles came out first.
Yes, it did.
So it was like it came out first. So they were around a long time. I was like, what? Can you guys hear me? Am I frozen?
No, you're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Am I frozen? What's going on?
No, he's
I guess maybe you are.
it's an alternate
I can't tell what's going
timeline.
on.
He's probably liking it, but he's right. I think they are pretty different. I think they're two different groups. In fact, I'll be honest with you, Adam. You're like, hey, let's talk about both of them. I'm like, how are we going to do this? Is it going to be a tail of the tape kind of deal? Is it going to be a walk down memory lane? I had no idea.
I prefer the walk down memory lane because everybody's debating, everybody's doing some sort of like static kind of inclusion of where they feel and whatever. So I was like, I really don't want to do a versus. You know, I think that was done to death on Instagram Live and shit like that. So I'm not doing a versus. So we're just like, let's do it. And I love how you said, you know, alternate universes because they do, right? But they're very similar, right? Both drummers. And again, when you think about the role of a drummer in a rock band, they're not the ones getting the chicks. Like that's it. You go for the
Dave
guitar.
Grohl into the chat.
Yeah, right? Yeah, but essentially, right? And even that Dave Grohl feel, there wasn't that before.
No, I disagree with that statement. No, I disagree with that. Nope, I disagree with that statement completely. Drummers, chicks love the drummers. I was there. They love the drummers. They just weren't up front. Tommy Lee, hello, Motley Crue, all of them. They were all John Bonham. All of them. They were all the drummers weren't Ringo Starr. That was her favorite Beatle was Ringo Starr. Like they just weren't the front men. But people love a good drummer. Trust me, they hold the beat. That means they have rhythm.
Drummers are always shredded too.
Yeah.
Seriously, look at them. They're always like shredded. None of them are like out of shape. I think because they got to move so much. But you mentioned Peter Gabriel, and I think it would be a crime to not shout out "Sledgehammer," the song of the year when it came out. That video, that song, it was so popular. I heard a story that he actually called MTV and said, quit playing it on MTV because no one's going to buy the album if they can listen to it anytime they want on your station, which I think is such a baller move to be like, hey, quit giving me too much love. It's getting it's sickening. Make people go buy the album. Don't let them listen to my music video. But
now that song is on my jogging playlist, and I'm like, oh, you can't tell me hip hop is dirty. Wait a minute.
That and Little Red Corvette were some of the most like cleverly sexually explicit songs of all time that not only made it to the charts but also are on like soft, like you listen to like jazz stations and you hear at least once in every hour either Little Red Corvette and Sledgehammer. So it's just like, wait, what? Okay, I guess I mean smooth jazz does act as some sort of aphrodisiac, so I'm just saying.
Well, it's funny because again, MTV, because there were a few songs that were really popular that were nasty. She Bop by Cyndi Lauper, Sugar Walls by Sheena Easton, which was written by Prince, and there's a bunch of songs that were kind of played. And I remember that was the concern, was that if you play them so much, they won't go to the store to actually get it because you just go on MTV. But back then they had like 12 videos, and they were played. I remember they were being played over and over again. It was like lots of Pat Benatar, lots of Judas Priest, it was the same 12 videos. So they're kind of like, okay, we got to be careful with that. And Sledgehammer was so groundbreaking that it was just kind of. But even with Don Henley's "Boys of Summer," that was a groundbreaking video also. The way it was shot. My favorite song, of course, is "Into the Innocence." I love that song. It's my favorite song of his, with Bruce Hornsby.
Yes.
But he had some videos that were also kind of groundbreaking. And then Phil Collins, of course, he was not a good-looking guy. He was not this attractive man, but he always showed his face in videos, close-ups. He did not care. He was like, "I'm who I am," and that's why I admire about him. He was like, "I'm not the run-of-the-mill pretty boy that was happening in the '80s." I mean, you had Culture Club and Boy George and George Michael. They were all the pretty boys. He came out, was like, "I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. The songs are great," and he was huge.
I would love to see you approach him and say that, "Man, Phil, I love how you're just ugly, but you still show your face on camera."
You show your face.
Okay, let me tell you something, real Jack Farmer. I talked to Whoopi Goldberg and told her to her face, "I love how you made a long career out of how you, despite how you look." And she said, "Thank you, James. I did it on my."
I did that over the glasses, looking like.
No, she was very nice to me. She was very nice.
That's the last time I talked to Whoopi Goldberg. She was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
thank you."
Never again is what he.
No, we're friends.
Oh, I was about to say, your view is slanted, sir. You know.
I know we're friends.
Well, tell her Sister Act 1 and 2 both slap, and I'm still waiting for Sister Act 3.
Oh, classics.
Nobody saw the reunion that they did on The View?
I saw it.
I did not.
I did not.
Okay, so you guys have some homework to do. It's literally on YouTube.
I don't think I do, though.
Oh, happy day.
I'm just saying.
I don't think I do.
It's cool.
Anyway, but again, in terms of like the alternate universes of Don Henley and Phil Collins, right? So it's crazy, right? Because again, both drummers, both big bands, right? They were just resting on their laurels of the Eagles, of Genesis. They could have been good. They were like,
actually, no. I'm going to correct you.
Really?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
In terms of sales, I used to read Billboard magazine for like 40 years. I don't read it anymore, but I used to. In terms of sales, the Eagles were huge out the gate. They were one of the biggest bands in the 70s. Then they petered out because they broke up and that kind of stuff. That's why Glenn Frey went solo. Genesis was an outlier band that had some cult status, but got big in the 80s because of Phil Collins, I think. Because they switched gears and became one of the biggest bands in the 80s. That's the reason why I'm correct. That's why I think the Genesis had to evolve, or else they would have went to obscurity. But I think that the 80s, Phil Collins saved them.
No, for sure. Again, I almost want to focus just on the Phil era, just for the topic of conversation. But again, yeah, they were obscure, much like Rush, right? They were these obscure, influential bands. I mean, if you listen to any music of the last like 20, 30 years, right? Who are they influenced, especially like the obscure cuts and whatever? And then they're like, okay, yeah, Genesis. Oh, yeah, Rush. But again, did they have the most commercial success in a period before Phil Collins or before, whether it be Limelight or Tom Sawyer hit the radio waves? I mean, Tom Sawyer didn't even hit the radio waves until later. I still kind of freak out when I hear K-Rock playing the Ramones, and I'm like, no, wait, because you didn't pay them. Like, you can't be cool now. Like,
pull over.
Yeah, exactly. Can't lie to kick it. Come on.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was about to take it in a different direction.
I was agreeing with the original statement as far as like you had these two bands that they had their fans, their legion of fans, and I've been to parties where you get the two different flavors of dad rock, if that means sense, and that says about the lasting power, because you're right, because it's very
unhappy
easy.
about that comment.
That is hot on my recent playlist right now. Like, I don't know anything. I thought that was the love child of Karl Malone, and I was just I don't know.
Well, it makes sense. He has a line saying, "I'm on the block like Mutombo." I mean, it could be a basketball guy, but what I'm saying is that it's It's actually a good point because music gets real classified. I think you talked about this, Jack and James, on your recent "He's a Farmer, I'm the DJ" thing. You know, when I was a kid, there wasn't hip hop, there wasn't R&B, there wasn't soul, there was urban music. So I would go to Sam Goody and go to the back wall for urban music, and that was kind of it. So I'm not saying dad rock derisively, but when someone's like play dad rock, I'm like, okay. When I was at Adam Sandler's house at the name drop, he loves Styx. That to him, that's the best band ever. So we're playing Styx. But to answer your question, like a lot of these bands, a lot of people in bands who are big can really walk away, or they can't find the formula for going solo because there's this balance of can you be yourself and almost have tendrils to the band without being the band part two. And I think to their credit, both Phil Collins and Don Henley did that pretty well.
It's always a little weird when a band breaks up and the singer basically just continues to be the same music without the band. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, I think of guys like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Like, I mean, it was Tom Petty. You might as well just call it Tom Petty. No one was like, man, I love the Heartbreakers. They were like, I like Tom Petty.
I love the East Side Boys, right?
Or the East Street Band with Bruce Springsteen, right? Like,
yeah, no one's like, man, I'm gonna go see the E Street Band. It's like I'm gonna go see Bruce Springsteen. So I guess that makes sense. But I have a question about Don Henley. Does his credit? Does he lose a little bit of credit? Does his stock drop a little bit when one of his biggest songs, "The Boys of Summer," gets covered by the Ataris, and I can hardly tell which version's playing until they say what the bumper sticker is in the song, if you know what I'm referring to.
Yes, the Black Flag versus
Deadhead.
Yes. Absolutely. And shout out to the dad for that. But no, for me, I love both. So the stock rises. If you're asking me, I think the stock rises because that also shows the influence of it. That again, a band of a different genre, right? I mean, before that, it was that the Ataris had a song. I can't remember. Like it's something about like the best I ever had. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but again, you don't hear that song. You don't hear any of the Ataris' original music when they play the Ataris on the radio or Sirius XM or what have you. You hear Boys of Summer, which again, ching ching, goes to Don Henley. So I think that bolsters Don Henley's claim, in my opinion.
Well, it's like what was that? Alien Ant Farm did "Smooth Criminal" by Michael Jackson. The song's the bomb. I love that version, and Michael got paid.
No, but I guess what I mean is with Alien Ant Farm, it sounds like a different song. With Ataris, it feels like they basically just said, "Oh yeah, we could do that also," and they did it.
It was like a cover. I was in college when it dropped. I was like, okay, I actually thought it was their song. I'll admit it. I thought it was their song until I was like, oh, it's a cover. Now I get how my mom felt when we were listening to rap songs in the 90s. She got a whole map on samples.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I don't think about it.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little statistic to tell the two, and it's not like the Vanilla Ice, dun, 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 minus dun, 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 dun. No, guitar solo. The guitar solo is different in both songs. Don Henley has like this weird, it almost sounds like a keyboard is playing versus a full-on guitar solo in the Atari's version. So I'm just saying.
Well, I'm going to bring up a very interesting fact. I'm going to bring up an interesting fact that I told according to Woods off camera.
Uh-oh.
So Prince's 1999 Slow Down is Sunset Grill by Don Henley and Sped Up is the Studio by Phil Collins. There was a whole talk about Phil Collins mentioned that. He was influenced by Prince's 1999 Lyric Corvette songs, and he decided to do a faster version. So you play it, it sounds like 1999. And Sunset Grill's the slower version. So that's the Don Henley Phil Collins put together.
Oh, that's interesting. I love the studio.
Yeah.
I love the studio.
Yeah, I think if we're comparing all these, I think personally, if you were to start matching up hit for hit, I think Genesis is the king there between these groups. Like, because they have so many good songs. Where I mean, I don't know if any of them are necessarily big. I don't know if they're the biggest of them all, but like. Invisible Touch, I Can't Dance. Actually, wait, maybe I'm thinking of
No Son of Mine.
No Son of Mine. But
Jesus, You Love Me.
Yeah, there's just so many good songs. I don't know. There's a lot of good songs.
Come on.
Jesus Knows Me.
But come on, but Eagles, hello, Tell Me Why, Hotel California, Desperado. I mean, it's like they have a gajillion songs.
Eagles, Hotel California. I'm going to say this. Flobo, I know you probably know about this already.
I agree.
James, I know you're a DJ. You may know about this.
I agree.
Hotel California is what us DJs call the go to the bathroom song. Because you can put it on and you've got plenty of time to get back. Because it's such a long song and you put it on and like when it's on, no one's really questioning what's going on. You can just put it on and then you can go run to the bathroom and get back before it's over. So now whenever I hear it, that's all I think about. Is like I got to go run to the bathroom real quick.
You could stroll to the bathroom, really. You can walk really slow to the bathroom.
Ouch. Well, Nate Wren says, I swear Hotel California always plays while you're going through the desert at night. So
I agree, and it's funny because that was my first Eagles experience. Was actually the Gypsy Kings cover when I was younger. When I was a young whippersnapper, and I went back and going, oh, it's a cover. How's it different? And I got into it that way. But like I always felt like Genesis was the kind of music you'll play at night in the hotel, looking outside the window. Whereas, like, the Eagles will play on that road trip with the snacks in the passenger seat under the stars. And so, yeah, when I think of road trip music, there's definitely an Eagles song in there for sure. Maybe Lion Eyes is right on top.
Oh, nice.
I love that song. Oh, my goodness. I think it's generational. I think it's generational. I mean, I grew up, they were huge all the whole 70s. So, for me, that's just childhood memories for me. I mean, all their songs, childhood memories for me. So, for me, and I think my generation, if you mention both groups, even though Genesis is part of my generation too, we'd probably say Eagles first before Genesis. I think if you called anybody my age, would probably say the Eagles have a longer lasting impact for culture than Genesis. And they might even say, and I'm sorry, Adam, to say this, some of those songs you're like, which one's Genesis and which one's Phil Collins? Like, I don't know.
What though?
Because if you go by the other soul people, Mike and the Mechanics, their music is very different. It's very different.
Yeah, living here.
I have to admit, honestly, when I said Genesis earlier, I went and looked at their songs, and I was like, oh, wait, a lot of these were actually Phil Collins songs. I was about to say.
Jesus.
So that's why I got a little hung up on the when I was saying that.
So
I walked right into it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. You just proved my point. Thank you.
But I was going to say, I just want to throw in there, speaking of covers, I'm going to take it back to covers. I always loved You Can't Hurry Love by Phil Collins. That's fun.
Diana Ross in the Screams cover.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. That's my point. That's my point. Thank you, Jack.
No.
I was like, studio? Oh, wait. Oops.
Yeah, that's totally Phil Collins. There's no doubt in my mind. In the air tonight, Phil Collins.
In the air tonight, I was like, oops.
Well, and then to James' credit, right, about the tempo changes in songs, I mean, Phil Collins actually did it pretty, it's behind the lines, right? Literally, behind the lines was, if you've ever seen Genesis live, if you've ever seen a concert footage, like since 1978, they began every concert with behind the lines, right? And what does Phil do for, like, literally one of his first tracks of his solo album was he basically sped up and made almost like a more funk cover of Behind the Lines. He basically took away the 3-minute intro and whatever, and it's just it's like a very doo-woppy thing, and all of the points are still there, but then he adds in horns where, in parts where, again, you would hear just a solo from Daryl Strummer and what have you. So it's just, to me, again, I think James has a point because, again, Phil did it with one of his own songs in Genesis.
Well, I don't know if you want to lean into that, but I felt from what I can see from clips online that the Eagles live are a whole different experience and a whole different class of how they present themselves.
I've seen that.
I mean, yeah. So I've heard there's certain bands, like Prince too, where there's the music and then there's like seeing them live, where it's like this whole different ethereal thing, almost like a festival inside one room, one space, one band.
Yeah, and the Eagles hate each other, so it's a great thing to go watch them on stage. But that's why their first comeback tour was Hell Freezes Over, because they got back together because Hell froze over. And they're doing it for the money. When they show up separately, they play 2-3 hours. They're amazing. Yeah, you have Timothy Schmidt. You have they always people they're all on there, and they go, "Bye, I hate you," and they go on back to their buses, and they see you later. That's what they did. And I saw the show. It was the show with the bomb. I mean, it was every hit you wanted to hear. It was amazing. But with Genesis, they do like each other. I was proud that he stayed in the band while being solo. I thought a lot of people, Beyonce's like, of course Destiny's Child. That bitch ain't been Destiny's Child a long time. But Phil Collins stayed with the band. Was like, I'll do both. Well, I think that's kind of cool. And like I said, and Mike Mechanics had their own hits, and everybody was doing their own little things on the side, but they stayed together. They didn't just go, he didn't go, bye bitches, see you later, and go off and do his own thing. He stayed with them.
We do a show, Flobo and I, we're on a show called the Everything Tournament, where we have a bunch of different things and we debate these things until we get down to the number one thing. I would love to do an Everything Tournament type thing where we have bands that got along versus bands that hated each other and see which bands were better, because it feels like the bands that hate each other are always amazing. And the bands that love each other, you're like, oh, they're okay. But the ones that hate each other are always like, yeah, these guys are great. They always come out with this great music. And I wonder if there's something about hating each other that makes the music better.
Yeah, that's the spitefulness makes the music better.
I always wish that David Lee Roth, yes, they could have stayed with. Yeah, I love. It's that whole thing. It's that energy. It's that electric energy of just like, I hate you so much, but we're good together.
That's what I heard about, like Oasis, like the brothers, they hate each other. And I heard that like the one brother, I always mix up which one's which, but the one brother would write the lyrics, and the singer wouldn't even look at the lyrics till he was in the booth and just bust it out in one take and be like, whatever, I'm out, loser.
Nolan Lee Gallagher, which it's funny, just a little bit of tidbit about Oasis.
Gallagher.
If you're fans of Shameless, the dysfunction is the reason why they basically named the Gallagher clan in Shameless the Gallagher's, is because Nolan and Lee of.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I mean, it's terrible, but it's cool. Yeah,
it is. And then another fact, right? In terms of the chemistry, right? Yes, that is absolutely true about the Eagles, right? But just to show how much that the Genesis guys, even into their 70s, still care about each other, right? 2020 was supposed to be another reunion tour, a world reunion tour of Genesis after Phil's "I'm Not Dead Yet," tour that he had for the first time in, I think, the early 2000s, right? And on one of the stops, I think it might have been Wembley, where Mike Rutherford of the Mike and the Mechanics basically joined Phil on stage for I can't remember what song. Oh, it was God, why am I blanking?
The Living Years?
No,
The Living Years, or
no, it's My Love You Will Always Be Somewhere in My Heart, whenever Follow You, Follow Me. There you go. Fuck it. Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself, man.
Yeah.
That's
it. Let's just redo the show. Start over.
But the thing about it is, I can remember the lyrics more than I can remember the song.
Oh, for sure.
The whole first verse before I give you the name of the song. But even still, right? If you look on YouTube, Mike comes out, and it's just like Phil almost has tears in his eyes, and you get that. You lose the fact, you get lost in the fact that they're, men over their 70s, they're legends or whatever. You got the feeling that these two are friends, right? And Phil, I went to the I'm Not Dead Yet tour, the stop at the Forum, right? Which ended up being the last show of the tour. And Phil was in a bad way. He was thrown from a chair. He was on a stool because his back is totally fucked. He broke his foot, I think his right foot, like 3 weeks before. It's like he's hobbled, right? And so too, he was in this clip, right? And he's just sitting in the chair, but Mike is there, and they look back, and whoever did the promo for this, and they basically ran through pictures of Genesis and them together throughout the years, and you got that from the 70-year-old versions of themselves. And I'm just like, Genesis is almost like the antithesis to say that you have to have strife, like you have to be pretty shitty to make it, right? Well, Genesis is not that. They're pretty cool guys. And they're pretty cool with each other, and they made phenomenal music.
Yeah, that's definitely the lightning in the bottle thing. I know on the comedy side, just to not to compare, but to do a correlation. A lot of times people say comedians need that kind of like strife to come out. They have to come from a bad place. And a lot of comics will say life was hard, we used it to cope. But almost like paradoxically, you sit down with Jerry Seinfeld and say, "Hey, how'd you do it?" And he goes, "Life was good. Parents tried. It was all right." But to going back to what Jack was saying, like there's times when all that negative energy can come together, and it's like magic, almost in a relationship kind of way. But it's always good to see the wholesome side of it when your friends are doing it. They've traveled the world. There's no drug quite like in a screaming room chanting your name, and to do it with your besties. And that's like the thing that I would love to have as a goal, to bring up the squad and be like, we did it together. Whoa! As opposed to being like, oh, Jack Farmer, just give me the story. Just give me the rundown. I'll read it and catch you later.
That's what you always say.
Oh, well, I wanted to get to the other point. I'm going to work on it, 2021.
Now, I said I wasn't going to go into comparing, but again, they almost exist in parallel universe, Henley and Collins, right? So both of them, right, even though they had like huge solo hits, right? I mean, who could forget with Don Henley, right? And a lot of people forget this, right? But the last moment of Friends, right? Friends, right? Everybody wants to get into binge watching Friends, and it's vogue to do and whatever. The very last episode of Friends closed out with the Don Henley track of New York Minion, right? So there's
Spoiler alert.
What happened with
30 years. 30 years. You had time. Get on your shit. You had time a whole year in the house. All the friends here.
He's got a point.
You know what? Screw you.
He's got a point.
Yeah, so, but the crazy thing about it, right? Both of them, they did duets and with other established artists and had hits, right? Who can forget Easy Lover with Phil Collins and Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire, right? But still to it, Don Henley has one as well. Leather and Lace with Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. So, do you guys have a favorite out of the two? Anyone? Apparently not.
I thought James was nodding. I know he was going first.
You want to go, Locke?
Oh,
I
so
think
a favorite out of Henley or Collins?
well, no.
I am having.
Uh-oh. I think he's like Elsa from Frozen.
I'm having okay.
You're here.
I was like frozen, so I couldn't even get there. So I was frozen. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So there we go.
So Leather and Lace versus Lover.
Can I say it again?
Leather and Lace, and Stevie Nicks versus Philip Bailey, Phil Collins, Easy Lover.
You can't compare those two. I mean, I love Stevie Nicks and I love Earth, Wind and Fire and Philip Bailey. You can't compare them. They're two different songs. I mean, they're two very different songs. One is sung by, a male and female perspective. Another one is it's two friends singing about a female. It's two very different subjects. But I will say this. Phil Collins was accepted in the Black community. He was, speaking of the R&B stuff that me and Jack did our show the other day, on Black radio, In the Air Tonight crashed Black radio. It correct that whole drum thing made Black folks go wild. And so he always had a through line. A lot of his songs were, it's like him, Sting the Police, Annie Lennox, a lot of those bands, Black radio played them because they had that kind of soulfulness. And I think Flobo said earlier about how he went funkier when he was solo. I think that's kind of what, and then Miami Vice, we all wore the shoes with no socks on and the colored, I did the whole thing too. That was also cred also on some weird level because he was played so much of that. He also appeared on the show, of course, a couple times. But Phil was played, even though Don Henley, I know a lot of Black folks who like Boys of Summer and a couple of songs too, but I think Phil had a little more. And then when Tarzan came out, he won the Oscar. He's an Oscar winner. Again, a lot of Black folks went and saw that. So I feel like on that end, if you compare the two, it's kind of like that. Where Stevie Nicks, who we love to death, came from another phenomenal band, Fleetwood Mac, and solo on her own, and Tom Petty. She's like the through line for everything. that Leather and Lace song is the bomb. It's one of my favorite songs. I think it's just a beautiful, her raspy voice, but it's a male-female thing. They're kind of like but Easy Lover is a contrast because Philip Bailey has that high falsetto, and we're shocked to see him go solo. We're like, you went solo? What's going on? From that group, but it was time. And then you had Phil Collins with his kind of mid-tempo voice, the kind of midline voice, and it really matches these two buddies over this girl who was an Easy Lover.
Well, I appreciate it because I think your objective is your perspective is a bit more objective. Because my dad, his name is actually Fleetwood. We grew up listening to Fleetwood Mac a lot, and so even though I preferred the other, I was like, oh, Stevie Nicks has done something. I'll check it out. Woo! It's funny because you think of Phil Collins, and I guess I don't want to say strategy because some people will say blue-eyed soul, but that's a marketing term. Like old school hip hop. What is old school hip hop? Which I'm sure you guys are going to talk about in another episode of your show. But the thing about Phil Collins, it was like with two ways. One, he respected the culture because he went back to Motown. I think his last album was all Motown covers, if memory serves. But even then, the beat progressions, even the subjects. In the Air Tonight does not have a actual story behind it, according to Phil Collins, but the idea of this like haunting beat, but I know what you did, it's a very street level like accessibility to things. Not to say that Eagles didn't do that, but when you have that music together, you can all feel what is going on, and that's what they call the soulful side of it. So I tend to be always a Phil Collins guy, but yeah, when Stevie Nicks was on a track, and we definitely played it in the house because of the Fleetwood connection.
Yeah, I'd say growing up we had more Fleetwood Mac than anything else in my house. But it was but it's always interesting comparing things. And I made a reference to like Tarzan earlier, but it is always interesting to see when some of these older songs have something current bring them back. And as silly as it is, In the Air Tonight with the that drum and being in memes and things now has brought that song back. And it's always interesting how that changes the perspective of it, looking back on it and how we see it now. And I like to use Queen as the example because they were kind of forgotten in a lot of ways until Wayne's World came out, and then they became super popular again. And then, of course, that popularity drifted a little bit until then the movie came out, Bohemian Rhapsody, and they got popular again. Adam Lambert. Yeah, there's certain things that bring them back, and that's one of those things that brings him back. And so right now it feels like songs like In the Air are so much bigger and better. But I don't know. Growing up, I heard a lot more Fleetwood Mac, I think. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say, my brother and I talk this all the time. What is passed down to the next generation? That's what lives on. And some things are passed down, and some things just aren't. You know what I mean? Like there's some TV shows you're like, well, that show gets passed down. You like a Fresh Prince or Moesha, they get passed down. But other shows that time period, the Parkers, or no one talks about those shows. They don't get passed down to the next generation. So they kind of die out until something brings them back. And I think Phil Collins was passed down. He just was he just kept going, and it was passed down, and Fleetwood Mac was passed down. And because I feel like there's some things that just aren't passed down.
Yeah.
What's interesting, and what's as far as passed down, and I guess to go back to my point about things become popular again and we see them differently. I always like to look at the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtracks because those are two soundtracks filled with songs that we all love today. But before those soundtracks came out, no one was sitting there talking about Blue Swede, before Guardians of the Galaxy came out. People weren't talking about, all these songs that were, Brandy, She's a Fine Girl. No one was singing that song before those soundtracks came out. But now suddenly they're popular again because some random, well, of course you were, but everyone else was.
Us mere mortals were not doing that. Yeah.
Right. But the point is now they're popular again. So it's very interesting how that will now. I think now people are like, oh, what were some of the greatest songs of the 70s? People will talk about those songs, but they weren't really passed down. It was just some guy that put together the soundtrack, got the rights to it.
No, they were passed down because what I mean by passed down is introduced to the next generation. That's what I mean. So you're right, Jack. No one was thinking about them in the new generations, but now you're talking about it. So it means it was passed down to you. And then some things aren't talked about. Some songs are just forgotten. They're never brought up ever again. And they were huge hits at their time. Like Dancing Queen by ABBA. Everyone knows that song. That song is passed down to everybody. Go on, Flobo. It was passed down to everybody.
I was, if I could just make one quick point, I guess I'm just making the difference of like Thriller never went away. Every Halloween, Thriller gets played. It will be played till the end of time. Where songs like Brandy, it disappeared. And if it weren't for someone, I don't know how many people put together the soundtrack, but for the sake of this story, I'll say one person says, let's put this on the soundtrack. And now it's passed down. If not for that one person, it could have been lost forever, at least to the mainstream. Now it's popular again.
Jack Farmer, we're agreeing. Actually agreeing. I'm just saying that I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that's.
I want you to say I'm right. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you said you're right. You know, you're wrong, and then so you're right. For those,
I'm agreeing. You're white.
Yeah. There is a.
You sure about that?
The rumors have been swirling. No, but I wanted to jump on that point too, because allow me to be cynical, because the cynicism is what I do. Is that a lot of these times that are passed down aren't necessarily naturally. It isn't like my mom jumping in and giving me Luther Vandross. I think Luther Vandross was passed down naturally, but look at someone like Dolly Parton. I know this is off topic, Adam. Forgive me, but she is a legend in her own right. One of the few country songs that I loved as a kid was Jolene, not knowing what Jolene was about. You know what I'm saying? But for a whole generation of people, Dolly Parton is Aunt Dolly from Hannah Montana, and that was a very concerted effort. Dolly Parton's like, I need my money to help out my community. People don't know who I am anymore. I'm jumping on this show. So like, there's that part too. Like, and I guess the big thing is Phil Collins, because he constantly worked, but he didn't have many hiatuses. There was more like cheesy B movies to put Phil Collins songs in. And Adam, I want to ask you a question. Your thoughts of Long Road Out of Eden, because that was like a huge gap between the last Eagles album and that one. I mean, that to me was almost like starting over from scratch in some ways.
Yeah, but again, much like how you guys were talking about I don't think it was as great of I think it was a great album. I don't think it was a great Eagles album, because the reason being is, again, I think you saw some of that tension, and like you kind of put a linchpin. Like, we hate each other, we make great music, right? And it was almost like they had rested on that fact. Like, we make great music and we hate each other. So I think a lot of some of the hate actually seeped through in some of the tracks, right? Where they weren't as good. I mean, again, you pair it up against. I'll even put like, I love the Killers, but I'll put that against Hot Fuzz, and it's still okay. It's okay, right? It didn't have any hits. That last Eagles album didn't have any hits or anything like that. But musically speaking, it's great. But in the discography that is the Eagles, you're like, it's essentially Kiss's Dynasty record. I Was Made for Loving You.
Right.
I love that record. That was their disco album. Don't be talking about the disco album.
Should I say Lick It Up? Is that what I should have said? It's a mass. That's what I should have used the analogy of, maybe?
No, Kiss, and first of all, just a little side note. Homeboy was always open about money. That was the whole, like, Gene Simmons was like, we're here to make money, not musicianship. He was always very open about that. So when he did the disco album, we were all kind of like, we're not shocked. I mean, it was like kind of like, oh, okay. And the song was a huge hit. But he was always about money. That's the one thing about Gene to this day. He was always about the money.
That Gene Simmons and I got a lot in common then. That's
Kiss Bros Just Coffee.
Totally. Right there. Totally. Yeah. Totally.
I mean, Michael Bolton wrote a Kiss song.
Wait, the Michael Bolton? I can go the distance. That Michael Bolton?
Oh, yeah. What is it?
The most obscure Michael Bolton song ever. I
know. Without you.
Yes.
How am I supposed to let it all?
Carry on. Yeah, that one. He was in a band called Black Jack, and Black Jack was well, and he wrote a Kiss song, and I think that was on Look It Up, the Unmasked album.
Yeah,
the moment I saw Kiss branded tennis balls, I was like, this band does not care.
Kiss condoms, Kiss caskets. What do you want
I heard a story about Gene Simmons. A story I heard about Gene Simmons. I don't know how true it is. I'm going to say it's true because I like it. He would, whenever he had meetings, he would bring a notebook with him. And he would write in deals that weren't true, but they looked like big deals that would be like competing deals with who he was meeting with. And then he'd always leave it out on the table and say, hey, I have to go use the bathroom or whatever. And he'd leave knowing that people were going to open the notebook. And so if I was like, hey, Flobo, let's do a show together, but I need you to pay me this much if you want me on, I would meet with you, but then have a notebook, and then I'd have notes from a quote unquote meeting with, let's say, James Lott Jr. saying James Lott Jr. will pay me X amount of dollars at this time. And you'd go, oh man, if I want Jack, I need to pay him this much money. And that would be one of the things he would do to try to negotiate, like,
Party
subtly. And I don't know if it's true or not.
No,
I like it, so I'm going to say it's true.
It's facts. No, that is absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And it's kind of weird, like that board meeting versus like Ozzy's board meeting. Like it's a completely different dynamic. Ozzy Osbourne, Fats,
Oh, I don't know if he does anything different. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay. Do you guys have a favorite Genesis or Eagles song?
A favorite what? I didn't hear the last part.
Genesis
or Eagles song.
Oh, from the actual bands.
Yeah.
Let me double check and make sure I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, too bad. While you're doing that, my favorite Genesis song, because I did love the video, was "Damn Confusion." I love that song. It had great commentary. It was a fun song. It's one of my favorites of Genesis. And then for Phil Collins, my favorite Phil Collins song, I think it's "The Studio." I love that song so much.
When I think of, as far as the bands go, I don't know. I think I don't know if it's actually my favorite song, but just because I remember it as a young whippersnapper watching it and it being on MTV. I love I Can't Dance. I remember the video so well. I remember it's just one of those things kind of like lodged into my brain. So there's something personal about it that I like, and so I'm going to say I Can't Dance.
Yeah, not for non-Phil Collins songs. I guess I was a Phil Collins fan. My two are Atlantic Confusion and Home by the Sea. I think those two I'm always like, oh, the Genesis, And for the Eagles, I mean, Hotel California is kind of its own category because that's like you hit the first note, you're like Eagles. But I like Heartache Tonight. That's a good one. That one kind of snaps.
Invisible Touch is a banger too.
Oh, Eagles too. Eagles. Okay. How's it going too? But they said Eagles too. Okay, Eagles. It has to be close between Lion Eyes and I Can't Tell You Why. I love both. I Can't Tell You Why. I love that song. It's beautiful, and it's Timothy B. Smith's big debut in the band with his lead single. And such a high voice. I love it.
For Eagles, I'm a Take It Easy guy.
Okay. That's good. I like that. I like that too.
Yeah.
You know about that song? That was actually I want to say it was Jackson Brown. That
yes.
Yeah, that had sat with him forever, and he gives it to Glenn Fry, and he's like, "Hey, I haven't done shit with it. Here you go." And he's like, "Damn it!" But in all honesty, he couldn't have done the thing that Glenn Fry and the Boyce did with that same song, right? So
it trips me out, like how much Jackson Brown's in everyone's secret sauce. He just shows up everywhere. Like, what?
Yeah. So there's that. There's the Stevie Ray Vaughan, Double Trouble. He rented out the studio space for that.
He does.
That's it. And I got to see him live once, and it was the craziest, most random thing. It was actually at Lucky Strike in Hollywood.
Whoa.
They used to do this thing called Backstage Live, where all of them session and touring, drummers and artists and whatever. They would just gather on a Wednesday night at Lucky Strike and play a concert, like a 3-hour concert. And he just showed up one night.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, you showed up to bowl, or like how the band's going on? Like how do you?
No. There's like a back.
Excuse me, I'm here to bowl. I'm bowling a 120 right now, and you're in.
The lanes were closed at night. The lanes were closed at night.
Okay. That's cool.
What I love about hearing about people like Jackson Brown who have these songs and they're not doing anything with them, so they get rid of them, is sometimes as us doing this and creating content and stuff, we beat ourselves up. So like, I have these ideas and whatever, I'm not doing anything, I got to do more. Jackson Browne had stuff. He's like, I'm not doing anything with this. Whatever, you take it. Like, so even people who are like, there's the people who are great. They have the same issues where they're working on stuff, and it's like, I haven't gotten to it, or I'm never going to get to that, or whatever. It's kind of reassuring that now, whenever I have an idea that I'm probably never going to get to, they're like, hey, happens to everybody. It's okay. I'm just going to go bowling and go see Adam.
I'll be there. Post COVID, I'll be there. Damn it.
So what are you doing here, Jack? Jackson Browne inspired me. What?
Yeah.
Just rolling in the bowling alley.
But those are facts. So, I not that anybody wants to know, but I will go Heartache Tonight in terms of Eagles, and then the favorite Genesis is Jesus Knows Me.
Okay, yeah, that's
Jesus Knows Me is like, yeah.
I mean, it's a good song, but it's not one that usually people bring up, man.
No, but again, when you for the time period, right? For the time period where you had a lot of scandal in terms of evangelism and all that jazz and whatever, that was as hardcore as any Rage Against the Machine or System of a Down song for that time period. To me, it
was before that, but yes, it was before that.
Yeah.
I would compare it to. It was as hard as any Madonna song, because Madonna was doing a lot of commentary back then and getting a lot of flack for it at that time period. And so when he came out with that, because Phil Collins is the happy guy, it's that they do upbeat songs. That was a big. I remember when it came out, it was a big deal. They were making commentary on something that was going on.
Yeah. So there's that, and then Heartache Tonight. So I don't know if you guys know it, but none other than the Hart family's Ron, Brett, and Owen, when they were still in Calgary, that would be their entrance music, was Heartache Tonight. So, so it has a special place in my heart.
Well, it's way before those copyright fees, I guess. But,
yeah, 100%. I don't know how Paulie got away with it in ECW, but that's another story for another day.
Oh, you know what? To be fair, I'm not about ECW. It's not a wrestling show. I understand that. But, like, ECW opened my eyes to so many bands. Like, I had no idea who Pantera was before ECW. Because, when RVD came out, I was like, yeah! Whoa! It was great.
Yeah, because ECW, that was definitely, like, they were like, we're under the radar. We don't need to pay licensing fees for this.
Play the cassettes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then in terms of, I think James, you kind of hit it. You did a
cassettes.
In terms of like your favorite Don Henley solo versus your favorite Phil solo. What say you guys?
The Don Henley solo?
Songs, I guess.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Don Henley solo song?
I think with Don Henley, like, I hate being the basic guy, but I like Boys of Summer. I think that's his best one. Dirty Laundry's cool too, but I'll be honest. I'm not really a deep cut Don Henley guy, but I think Boys of Summer is a great song. I think it's one of those songs that, as far as talking about transcending time, I think as you could imagine, any kid during summer break listening to that song and it being kind of the soundtrack of a kid's summer break song. That's how it feels to me, anyways. And like, you look back, when you were younger and like, yeah, I don't know, just that feeling of summer break and it kind of coming to an end and like that feeling. So I always connect it to that. So I like it. I know it's basic. I know it's the big popular one, but whatever. I don't care. I like it. Everyone likes it. That's why it's the popular one. Humph.
The emphaticness at the end of it. I love it.
Yeah. And he added a click track too. I don't know. All right. I guess James.
Yeah. James, go ahead.
Sorry, I froze. What was the question again?
He's asking for your favorite when they're solo stuff. So one favorite Don Henley song and one favorite Phil Collins song, or multiple favorites if you have.
Well, I said, for Phil Collins, it's the studio, but I also love Two Hearts. I think it's a very fun song from Buster, I think it is, or something he was in. I like Two Hearts. That's a great song. I even like Separate Lives with Marilyn, whatever the fuck her name was, from White Lights, whatever. I kind of like that song too. I don't know what's going on with this song. Some chick that had one hit and that was it. Okay, so then Don Henley solo. I guess again it goes back to I like Sunset Grill and I like Into the Innocence. I just like the piano. I like the softness. I like Into the Innocence is a beautifully haunting song. I was playing it the other day actually, and it made me tear up a little bit because I was going through something. I was like, this song really fits it. It's like the end of something, and the song really conveys the end of something like that.
I like it.
See, I'm torn because of the two questions you asked, I like the Eagles better as a group and Phil Collins better solo. So I do like Dirty Laundry, but it's a minor hit in the Flopito jukebox, if you can imagine. And that's like the
Great song.
the top
Great
three.
song.
It's good, but like I can't think of like a many. I can't like this and that and that. I told you about the studio. That was one of the one. In the Air Tonight was a good one. Hanging Long Enough is one I don't hear often enough. I think that's a dope song people forget about. But those are the big three for Phil Collins for sure. Like I guess I am basic in that way, but I won't.
Basic.
I know, right? Totally. Pumpkin Spice.
Yeah. So then mine. So in terms of Don Henley, it is Taking You Home because, and I know it's like it doesn't register to a lot of people, right? But that was when I was like, I saw the video on, I think it was like VH1, right, at like 5 in the morning, and I was just like, this is cool, right? And this is the era of like Bob Carlyle's Butterfly Kisses. Everybody was getting sappy, right? And I didn't know that he was the same guy that did Boyce Summer. I didn't know that he was the drummer for the Eagles, right? But with that song, with Take Me Home, I essentially went down a Don Henley wormhole. So for me, I wouldn't be as impressed of the works of one Don Henley if not for Taking You Home. So that is my Don Henley track, and it's a slow, mellow tempoed, whatever. But it just, I don't know. To me, it just speaks to that time period as well as like I just love the words of the song. And again, this is like late '90s. I was living in Inglewood, right? So it couldn't be a further departure from where the song was set, right? But I got it. I got it as a pre-Russ and Steve. So there's that. So I've got Don Henley's Take Me Home, and then Can't Turn Back the Years with Phil Collins. And I didn't know how much I was affected by the song, but I associated to when, like in San Francisco when I was growing up, and my dad was playing music at Fisher's Wharf. I purchased one of his seats here. But
touche.
Yeah, absolutely. So until I saw it live at the aforementioned I'm Not Dead Yet tour back in 2018, late 2018, or 2019, I should say, I was stupid because I associated it to that time period, me riding in the van with my mom and dad, in between gigs and everything like that. And it hit me like, oh, damn, like this is what he was talking about. And that forever will be my favorite Phil Collins song. And if you want a more soulful R&B-esque cover of it, none other than Joe. Joe has a really cool cover of Can't Turn Back the Years. So,
cool. Yeah. All good selections. Oh man, but crying out that's been like earth shattering, dude. Change. It was one of the regrets I have in my I won't say middle agedness, but right before being middle aged, I hadn't gone to many concerts when I was younger because my parents are homebodies, and so I don't have a concert story. But to have something like that happen, that's been pretty awesome.
yeah.
So that's fine. I mean, before that, it was maybe. There's quite a few of them because again, I think other than Bruce Springsteen, right? Who can actually play a 2+ hour concert and it's no opening act and it's just that.
James, he's like Prince. Prince can do it.
Yeah, but again, you got a handful. You've got Prince. You've got maybe Madonna. You've got
Prince. James was like, of course, Prince. I'm out.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have time to listen to people talk about non-Prince.
I think. Well, actually, Jay-Z has an open act. Outkast did it a couple times in their 20-year reunion tour, but that's hip hop, still different. So, and yeah, but usually you're right. There's an opening act. I always tell the story because it's so weird. I saw Bon Jovi live, and the opening act was Dashboard, and it was so different. But
Yes.
it was an opening act for Bon Jovi, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that. I guess it would be a marketing mission to brand a star. See that? But yeah, well. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Where can they find you all on social media?
Yeah, they can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. You can also check me out on the Everything Tournament on Thursdays, where I chat with Flobo and we break down everything to find the ultimate champion of everything. You got to watch it to know what I'm talking about. Also, I do the Elite of the Week, the AEW Dynamite after show, where we rank the best of AEW Dynamite and we debate it. It's fun. Join along.
Yeah.
Why not?
So if you're watching this show and you're like, wait, this guy's not a huge Eagles fan, what's wrong with him? Just for some references, my favorite bands of all time are Foreigner and The Who, so I'm not totally living under a box or a rock. My name is Flobo Boyce. You can follow me at Flobo Boyce on Twitter and Instagram, and at Flobito on Instagram. And you gotta watch Draped in Gold with Jack and I, because we argue weekly. DrapedInGold.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I will go ahead and do James's. You can find James Lott Jr. at James Lott Jr. literally on all of your social media feeds, as well as JLJ Media. Yes, that is James Lott Jr. Media, for those who are inclined, but that's him. And, I was doing your plugs, but you plug yourself.
Yeah, plug yourself.
Plug yourself. Welcome back. Plug yourself.
I don't even know what the F is going on here. So I'm going to say one fact that we have missed this whole time. Phil Collins' coolness happened. I'm wearing USA for Africa at Live Aid. I watched it live. He played at both concerts in Europe, in England, and in Philadelphia. He took the Concorde over and played both concerts on the same day. So Phil Collins wins just for that coolness right there. And I watched it live. USA for Africa. 1985, kids. That's right.
Honorary
Before you guys
citizen
were
of
born.
Wakanda. I respect it.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent. James Lott Jr., where can they find you on social medias?
Well, where can you find me? We're all James Lott Jr. is sold at James Lott Jr. on all the social media platforms. I have TikTok at James Lott Jr. I have a lot of help. I have Talk a Lot. I have everything with Lot in it. Follow me. JLJ Media is my network on YouTube. Be there or be square.
Damn right. And thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and yes, Twitch. These guys are subscribed. I'm subscribed to all of theirs, and you should be like us and subscribe to all of our things. I'm just saying. But if you need help convincing further than what I just said, here's Zeta Zang.
Hey, this is Zeta Zang. Make sure you subscribe.